It's time to check in at the Minotaur Hotel. If you listen to my Q&A thing, I did talk about this VN, and you can see version 0.2 just came out a few days ago. So we're going to start doing this. It's broken into chapters, and I'm not quite sure how long it's going to take to do 2 or 3 chapters, so we'll find out as we go along. And we'll be doing a whole series on this. And as you noticed earlier in that little info thing, there is a safe for work version. That's the one I'm going to be playing, just because it makes my life much easier without editing and censor boxes and all that kind of fun stuff. But there will be the link in the description. It's free, by the way, so you can download it, play it for yourself, see all the other options I don't do, and play the not safe for work version, because why not? Anyway, that's all I have to say for the moment. Let's get going with Minotaur Hotel. And yes, we're going to play the safe for YouTube version here, which is new to me. I haven't played this one before. You don't remember much about that night. Your travels had taken you far from home. The sleepless nights tossing and turning under an unfamiliar ceiling, always been on edge, alone with no one to turn to. You were halfway dead. It was 3 a.m. It felt you hadn't slept in a proper bed for at least 2 nights. You were pulling all the spirit you had left to keep you going, grinding your mind and bones to dust. You went for a restroom break. The fluorescent lights of the restroom made your skin look unnatural as you pulled out a map. Didn't quite make sense. Every time you blinked, the shapes would rearrange. Splashing your face with water made your eyesight less blurry. The stubborn reflection in the rusted mirror lagged behind you. You looked about 10 years older and about twice as angry. The stained door creaked as you made your way out. You had arrived at... let's go with this one. An airport. It was a tiny airport in the middle of nowhere. It didn't have much, and what little it had was poorly maintained. The bathroom was an atrocious mess. The lobby's floor was stained with age. The single narrow landing strip's concrete was cracking. Even so, it had been built to last, decorated with brutal obsidian pillars cut right out of the earth itself, and marble tiles polished into labyrinthine patterns. The walls were lined with statues in grotesque style, their exaggerated expressions locked in wide-eyed screams. The ceiling was covered with lattice reproductions of paintings, Michelangelo's The Creation of Adam, and a bit up ahead, Picasso's Guernica. The lobby seemed to extend forever onwards, lined on either side by rows of closed-down stores. The elevator music playing from some unseen speaker was enough of a distraction to keep you going. A sudden crackling of static broke the song. You'd found your way into an old sports bar, populated solely by an old radio and an even older gentleman. His skin was paper thin. He held a cup of coffee, and every time he sipped from it his shaking hands would spill half the contents. The old man's glazed gaze passed over you a few dozen times before he realised you were there. As he looked at you, he patted the stool beside him and shook his hand in your direction. He poured a cup for you. You sat, hunched over the counter and took a sip. A breeze of life poured over your face. You couldn't even register what it tasted like. You just knew right then and there that you were alive and wide awake. You looked to your side, to the old man. His face is contorted into some form of distress, lips quivering as his eyes dart to and fro. He puts a hand over each of his pockets, face still locked in fear, until his right hand falls over his breast pocket. He breathes a sigh of relief and looks at you. He starts talking, but not in a language you understand. He's not even looking at you. His gaze wanders around with seemingly no goal. Eventually he finds a thread you can follow. Well, you seem like a traveller type. You remind me of... He hesitates, glances around, mulls over his words. Yes, you remind me of myself in my younger days. He looks ahead and takes a sip of his drink. You catch a glimmer in his eyes, a sudden wakefulness. Oh, I was a fool. Never settled down and squandered my one chance at a proper life. Felt the road would always take me in. Well, I ended up throwing away the one place I could call a home.
It's been rotting for who knows how long. Now I'm old. I always wondered if someone would ever take over and treat it right. Now, you do remind me of myself, but I wasn't a good man. Hopefully you don't have the mean streak I had.
Well, I'm far from perfect, but I do try my best.
Oh, is that so? I suppose that's as good as it gets. Well, at least nowadays you can try. Oh, back in my day, my father treated me like dirt and no one batted an eye. Well, I saw that happen a lot too. I wasn't the only one. Oh, it made beasts out of my siblings and I having a father like that. Oh, but don't you think I'm blaming him? You can only point the finger at your dad for so long, eh? At least eventually found a way to make a living. How about you, young man? Have you found a calling?
My calling? Let's see, what shall we go with?
A man of culture, yes. Oh, that's very scarce these days.
The old man rambles in the same language from before. Sometimes he'll stop and stare at you as if expecting a response. A nod or a grunt is enough to get him going again. His voice becomes graver and deeper as the night goes on. It is soothing in a way, even if at times he'll again allude to having a rough, sorrowful past. Eventually he stops and his gaze seems to shine with lucidity once more.
Oh, I must say I'm terribly sorry. I'm afraid I never asked for your name. Oh, I'm glad I met you, Leo.
The old man's eyes become glazed again and his hands start shaking. Coffee spills everywhere, but it's gone cold already.
You seem like a reliable sort. I'd like you to have this. I'm sure you'll take better care of it than I did.
The old man takes an old piece of paper from his breast pocket and extends it to you.
The deed for the place I told you about. The one I squandered. I'm old, tired. I'd like someone to have it. I've been looking for an heir for a while now. I don't quite feel like I have any more time to waste. Just take it, it's yours. A grandiose place, a hotel. Time's taken a toll, but you will love it. Just, please, take care of it. Be good. Give him a purpose.
You raise an eyebrow at him. Did this old man try to give you a hotel just like that? Who would do that? His wandering gaze betrays his senility. At times he seems outright confused as if he didn't know how he got here in the first place. You can't take it. It wouldn't be right to take advantage of someone like him. And that's assuming that piece of paper is a deed. It might just be a used napkin with a nice seal. The old man's gaze wanders around. With his hand still extended, he squints his eyes at you, then looks down to the paper. He struggles to put his thoughts together, but for a brief moment his expression grows firm and lucid.
You must think I'm crazy. But please understand, this is my last chance to do it right. Just take the deed.
The old man offers you a deed for property. Do you accept? He really wants us to do this. I mean, we can always return it to him if someone wants it back. And he really wants us to take it. You give in to the old man's pleas. You're just accepting a piece of paper after all. It's probably nothing. If indeed it is something important, you can try returning it. This old piece of parchment looks unimaginably ancient. Older than you, that's for sure. The wax on it seems reasonably new, perhaps even fresh. You break open the seal and examine the paper's contents. It's gibberish written in an alphabet you've never seen before. Well, it would seem like this was all for nothing. You stick the deed in your jacket's pocket. You look back up at the old man. The corners of his mouth wrinkle and he shakes ever so slightly, for his joy is short-lived. His gaze wanders once again. When his focus returns to you, he furrows his brow, taking in each of your features one at a time. The old man mumbles something to himself, takes a sip of his coffee and smiles.
You're very kind, young man, Leo.
He doesn't remember your name, at least. You check your wristwatch and the numbers too have turned into gibberish. You take it you've spent too long here. Here? You look around. You're inside a cafe in a train station. Weren't you in an airport? You try your hardest to process all this, but your sleep-deprived mind isn't cooperating. You have, however, a train ticket on your hand. Just realising it's there washes away any other silly memories. You sling your rucksack over your shoulder. You don't need to check your ticket to know it's time to go. You say your farewell to the old man and thank him for the wonderful coffee. He subtly bows to you.
No, Leo. It is I who ought to be grateful. It was a pleasure dealing with you.
You leave the cafe and make your way to the train. The station is deserted, save for a single man smoking a cigarette outside the cafe. You greet him with a nod and he responds in kind. Aside from the old man, he's the only person you find. Maybe that ought to be expected at this time of night. You make your way through the empty station. There's no one to greet you at the boarding platform. You make your way in regardless and settle down in your seat. It's hard to say for sure exactly how long you've been travelling. All the airports, truck stops, train stations and ports mixed together. The restlessness of unending travel is the only constant. There was a you back home, and you knew who that individual was. But to be a wanderer is to face the traveller you, and that person's face seems alien sometimes. All those thoughts melt away like butter as you close your eyes. There's a warmth spreading out from your chest all the way to your fingertips, crawling from inside your skin. It's a mercy. Tonight, sleep will embrace you before you know it. A few days later, the horizon sprawls across the stained windshield. The radio's tune is disintegrating into static. The AC can't keep up with the sun's heat on the car's roof. The desert stretches on the entire horizon ahead, a wasteland of flat, yellowed plains. To the right, about 100 metres from the road, the dusty soil gives way to a sharp cliff. A valley peeks out beneath it, stretching to the blue horizon. You check the deed again. You couldn't read it at first. Maybe you were too tired. But now the once gibberish characters occasionally make sense to your brain. It's like reading a language that branched off your native tongue a few centuries prior. It's just alien enough to be unrecognisable at first. However, when you squint hard enough you find that the characters remind you of your alphabet, and then the word's meaning pops out into your mind. It's unsettling, in a way. It feels as if your brain is shifting from inside out the more you look into it. But try as you might, it's as if you can't quite think too hard about this discomfort. You squint at the deed. Just an hour or so ago you had checked it and realised how close you were to the address. And so you got into your car and set out, with a newfound curiosity galloping in your chest, even as a nagging anxiety ate away at you. Maybe the old man really had given you something of value after all, and not some worthless scrap paper. Could it really be? You got a deed for a hotel from a senile man in a cafe? Sure, not many would complain about getting something for free like that, but at the same time, most would argue that it feels wrong. The hotel should just be farther ahead. You turn on the engine and set off again. It pops up on the horizon just 5 minutes later. A while later you pull into its gravel parking lot. It's like looking back in time at what must have been one of the greater hotels of the 30s and 40s. It's built entirely out of marble in an Art Deco style. It's majestic, grandiose even, but utterly ruined by age and made eerie by its surroundings. Who thought building such an incredible place in the desert would be a good idea? You look to the infinite horizon behind you. There is nothing aside from the hotel. No plants of any kind, no cacti, brush, or even dead trees. Only a hotel in the middle of a desert built on top of the cliff's wall. No animals either. The sky is blue without a cloud or bird of prey in sight. The ground beneath you has no bugs, not even a scorpion or a spider. There are no other cars on the road either. You look back to your car's panel. The odometer indicates you've only driven about 4 miles. Your car's hood is cool to the touch, as if it had been off for hours. You look back to the hotel as you think about all those details. Something catches your eye, however, a porch overlooking the valley beneath the hotel. The valley below stretches to the cloudless horizon, framed to the right and left by more cliffs. Looking down to the bottom, you can just make out the outline of a dry riverbed stretching out. You notice there's a cave opening in the cliff wall, right below the hotel. Its exit is lined with statues, the details of which you can't make out at this distance. Right outside there are rocky tiles spreading out in pathways. You'd wager a guess it made for a labyrinth of sorts when the river still flowed. The maze ends with a single pathway leading to a high mound which had easily stood as an island in the middle of the flooded valley. This region's terrain is much like the hotel. It may have been beautiful a long time ago. Now it's eaten away by time. Your reflection is broken as a more pressing matter sneaks up on you, the heat. Regardless of the weirdness around you, there's no escape in the sweltering sun. You walk to the entrance. The doors are unlocked. It's hard to tell how long this place has been abandoned. The building itself surely is old. The exterior is severely decayed. You wouldn't be surprised if the interior is teeming with wild animals, rotten walls and fallen pieces of ceiling. But instead it's just dusty. Humid and stagnant too. The walls are water damaged and there's a lot of mould. However, it's not as bad as one would think. You call out in the hope someone, anyone, might be there. Maybe some squatters? But just like outside, there's no signs of life at all in the hotel. You walk up to the reception. The counter is as dusty as you'd expect, and there are pens and yellow pieces of paper strewn about. It seems whoever was here left this place in a hurry who knows how many years ago. There's a door behind the reception desk that leads you to a small but dignified office that seems been left under a similar state of hurry. There are even portraits on the table showing black and white pictures of a smiling family. On the table is a ledger. Like everything else in the hotel, its pages are yellowed and wrinkly, but it's still readable. It contains a list of guests, their respective rooms, check-in and check-out dates, signatures and so on. The last guest checked in back in 1944. To be more precise, someone attempted to check in on that date, but something interrupted the process. All the following pages in the ledger are blank. You return to the reception to continue looking around. Up ahead is a tall spiral staircase going both up and down. There are multiple paths branching out from the lobby. You take one of the hallways leading down to the bedrooms and find all the doors unlocked. Much like the lobby, the bedrooms' rotting walls were consumed by time. Walking into them disturbed the fine mist of stagnant spores and dust, which was turned into a curtain of diamonds by the sun shining through the windows. Each bedroom was equipped with at least one king-size bed. The springs were busted more often than not, and the fabric yellowed. But even such desolation could hide the past glory of this place. You returned back to the hallway, which seemed to stretch forever forward. From outside the hotel it looked big, but not nearly sprawling enough to have a ground floor with over 100 bedrooms. No matter how many twists and turns you took, the hallway never wrapped back into itself. Backtracking all the way back to the lobby was the only option. The spiral staircase seemed much more inviting than wandering the seemingly endless hallways. Over the staircase, all the way up, there's a skylight draping the sun's warmth over your shoulders. It was a lighthouse, guiding travellers to this once majestic hotel. The way down was as ominous as the skylight was graceful. The marble handrails were lined with burnt-out lamps. It was impossible to see much in the darkness down below. The second floor was mostly bedrooms again, but here the outer hallways were lined with sprawling windows showing a courtyard behind the hotel, close to the cliff's edge. It was a sight to behold. While the hotel was consumed by time, the garden outside had flourished. It was a field brimming with white flowers swayed in this wretched desert's wind. At the centre was a statue of a man and a dog. The flowers rose up to the man's knees, and only the top of the dog's head could be seen. The man's hand was outstretched, as if beckoning the flowers to grow taller and for people to approach. The garden seemed a more inviting adventure. You descended back down the marble staircase, brimming with clarity, and it felt like a cloak or a hug was draped over your back. You took the hallway leading further towards the hotel's back, and a single turn to the right brought you to a vast room. Right beside its entrance was a bar, and to the left tables, couches and reclining chairs. Further left there was a tall window of stained glass like the ones in a cathedral, and through a glass door beside this window was the garden. The wind blown through the garden sent out a long continuous whistle. From this low angle the statue seemed like a king, tall yet humble, beckoning his dear subjects. The flowers swayed back and forth in the singing wind, and the dog's head was barely visible above them. Its ears were poked up and its tongue lolled out from its grinning mouth. Behind the statue, behind the courtyard, was a railing overlooking the drop into the valley below. As you walked around the statue, you noticed out of the corner of your eye that the dog seemed to turn its head to follow you. You looked back. The dog statue hadn't budged, for indeed it was gazing right at you. You parted the flowers and walked up to it, and that's when you noticed the dog had 3 heads, one staring forward and one looking off to either side. All 3 of them exuded warmth. You petted one of its heads and noticed how worn the marble was. People had been petting him for a very long time. Then you made your way to the cliff's edge. Once more you were greeted by the valley. Straight down, far below, you could see the statue-lined cave exit. You could only wonder how vibrant this land must have been ages ago, when the valley's river still flowed. You go back inside, into the vast room. It seems dark but intimate now that your eyesight is used to the exterior's brightness. You can still notice the whistling coming from outside. You take a seat at the bar. Its newfound darkness is smooth, soft as velvet. It's like being in a candlelit lounge. Behind the counter, the bottles of fine spirits are still half filled. They glimmer in exquisite browns, reds and blues. You close your eyes and imagine how this place was decades ago. The whistling shifts again. It turns into the hum of human life. Footsteps and breathing. Chairs being dragged, cutlery and plates clinking. Laughter, whispers, people greeting each other from across different tables. People dressed so nicely, a barman in front of you serving the finest drinks you can imagine. He knows your name and how you like it. Whether you are tired or brim with life, he lends you an attentive ear. You open your eyes. You are back in the abandoned hotel, majestic and destroyed. One can understand why the old man wished to pass it on to someone who'd care for it. You tap your jacket's breast pocket, making sure the crumbled parchment is still there. Even the yellowed, stained paper exudes warmth now. You stand up and walk out. As you do, you notice a large purple stain on the floor behind the counter and the glass shards of what used to be a wine bottle. You proceed further into the hotel. There's a lot to see still. All the way down the hallway, a set of sliding glass doors beckon you. But from afar the difference is clear. The wallpaper is ripped and one of the doors is cracked. You step on something hard. A revolver bullet. You push the door to the side and are greeted by an even more chaotic sight. It's the hotel's restaurant. The tables are overturned and both chairs and plates lay broken on the floor. There's a darkened stain in the middle of the room which trails into the kitchen. It leads you past the pantry to the massive iron door of a cold room which is locked from outside and boarded up. All around the kitchen things are strewn about. There's even a pan on the stove with what must be fossilized food, and the sink is filled with dirty dishes. On a nearby counter is a revolver covered in thick dust. You think back to the bullet in the hallway and the stain on the restaurant floor. The old man wasn't kidding when he said he wasn't a good person. You check your phone. Perhaps you'll need to call the police or a morgue. There's no signal out here. You breathe in, preparing yourself for a terrible sight. The rusted door fights against your will, but stands no chance. Darkness pours out. The stench strikes first. It's the stagnant smell of blood and rot. It clings to your nose and mouth like a bitter oil. Before your eyes can adjust to the darkness, a second wave of stench hits. It's like a farm, too. The scent of dusty fur, maybe even hay, that cooped up in a hot, humid room for decades. And last but not least, stale shit and piss. This place has it all, the stench of 1,000 different deaths. The light pouring into the cold room shines on the floor in front of the doorway. Empty cans of soup and glasses of jam are strewn about over the trail of all blood. Whoever's locked in here didn't die quickly. The cold room extends into absolute darkness, a hallway in and of itself. You proceed, scraping your shoes on the floor so you don't trip over the refuse. The entire floor is covered with discarded glasses and cans. Whatever scraps were left in them has long rotted, dried, and crumbled into dust. Both your footsteps and breathing echo. The overbearing humidity drapes across your back, and your breathing becomes agitated. The stench is stronger. Your sight finally adapts to the dark. What must be the cold room's far wall, you notice the faintest glimmer. Whatever it is, it's slouched on the floor, motionless, as if it died where it stood after who knows how long locked here. A shy blue glimmer, however, flickers where its left eye ought to be. What? We can't call the police, there's no signal. What is this? Your eyesight is used to the dark now. The distant pillar of light bleeding from the doorway is enough to avoid tripping on the discarded glass. You crouch in front of the thing. It has a bull's head. You look around its neck, searching for a zipper or the edge of a mask, but there's none. It's covered in fur, aside from the patches of sickly exposed skin. It has hooves instead of feet. Its horns could easily gore a person. Half of its skull is exposed. The bone has a smattering of blood dust near the remaining flesh. Its left eye socket is empty, but something shines inside it. A blue ember. The fur is coarse and unkempt, but can't hide how deathly thin this creature was. It died from starvation, not from whatever destroyed its face. That's enough. You stand up and turn back to leave. As you do so, your rustling clothes and echoing footsteps break the curtain of silence. That's when you hear it. Breathing, as faint as a moth's wings flapping. You look back to the corpse. The blue flame flickers at you. Its chest expands and contracts. You take a step forward and the spark follows you like an eye. You set your gaze on the thing, trying to read its torn-off face. Can you understand me? It barely reacts to your voice at first. Your words sink to it and crawl into its head, dig their way to its mind, and then twist until it wakes up. Like a butterfly coming out of its long sleep, the thing's remaining eye shifts back to life. It nods to you. What are you?
Why, I'm the hotel's keeper and prisoner of the labyrinth.
His voice is raspy, nearly a string of grunts booming through the room in contrast with his shriveled body. His remaining eye frowns.
You're the master now, which makes me your servant. Mount to your will. I cannot disobey your orders.
The thing cradles its head between his arms. His voice comes out as muffled.
If you wish to know what thing I am a hybrid monster. About my sorry state, the previous master did this to me. And as your servant I shall answer the master's questions.
He remains with his face hidden for a while longer. When he does look up, he stares at the exit and not at you. He squints his eye and raises the deathly thin forearm over it. He scuttles an inch to the side so your shadow covers him. You're the hotel's keeper. You're a prisoner, but you're also the hotel's keeper? His eye narrows and the ear droops.
Yes, I was sentenced by the gods to spend eternity here. I did not fight my killer, and for such meekness I was condemned. The gods made this land which they call the labyrinth to house me in my damnation. The master is meant to be my torturer, and to that end is given control over the land. But there was a master who believed the labyrinth could turn into a soothing place, and that I could tend to it. So by his will I became the keeper. And by the god's ancient command, the labyrinth attracts those who are lost and have nowhere to go. They become our treasured guests.
He closes his eye for a moment, lost in a daydream. What about your life before you came here? What was it like?
Master Jean-Marie told me it became a matter of legends. I was born from a queen who had an illicit affair with the white bull of the sea god Poseidon. I was raised in the court of King Minos in Crete. He took me as his son, even if I was much worse than a bastard. But eventually my sister demanded I be sent away. Father Minos acquiesced, mother spoke not. So they shipped me off to my first labyrinth, alone with just an axe for company. I stayed there for years, until one day the warrior Theseus came for my head in rebellion against father's reign. He was prepared to fight me, for I had nothing to live for, so instead he provided me with mercy. As you can see, the previous owner attempted the very same. But I cannot die, not this time. I only lost some flesh. And the hotel's guests.
His eye flickers madly. Why did the previous master do this to you? The creature recoils, shrinking further into a fetal position.
Well, being a monster is reason enough for damnation, master. He chose to return the labyrinth to its original purpose, I presume.
His bony jaw opens and closes, chewing on nothing.
Does one need a reason to follow the will of the gods? It hardly matters. Regardless, I cannot die.
His open wounds stand out as he speaks, alongside his madly flickering flame. They glare enough to be visible from afar, even in the darkness. How can I help with your injuries? He exhales sharply at your words. His face sinks again between his legs.
Master need not worry about me. I cannot die, and it stopped hurting a long time ago. The skull feels no pain. What truly hurts is thinking about our guests. For all this time I've wondered what happened to them. I hope they found belonging elsewhere.
What type of people used to consider this their home?
Just about anyone in need, if fate saw it fit for them to stumble here. Orphans and runaway children, homeless wanderers chased by their past, shell-shocked men seeking respite. Those who have no one else and no place to call home. Before the last master took over, the hotel belonged to a man who fought in the First Great War, Master Jean-Marie. He saw fit to bring in those displaced by bloodshed. His voice falters for a moment, you hear a little cracking. The hotel was glorious then. Master Jean-Marie survived the First War, but not the Second. So his brother inherited the hotel and saw fit to enact his will against me.
You pull the hotel's deed from your breast pocket. So it's this that makes me the new master?
Correct. The ownership of the labyrinth was transferred to you. I always know who the current master is and his name.
Why were you locked here?
That is what the last master saw fit. He shot me, then commanded that I stay here in this room. But as you can see, I am undying. It only hurts. I cannot be killed. I can only presume he expelled all the guests shortly after. And now the hotel must be in as sorry a state as I am. He locked the door as well, but his command was enough. I cannot disobey, so I had no way out. I am a prisoner after all.
You asked all your questions. Another comes to mind now. What's your name? He hesitates for answering. His burning eye shifts ever so lightly.
The master holds the right to pick my name, but if it is your wish to know, the one I was given at birth is Asterion.
Asterion the Minotaur adopted son to King Minos of Crete. Asterion looks to you as he speaks. Perhaps in the distant past those words, adopted son to King Minos of Crete, brimmed with pride. But today they drip with the nostalgia and hope of a man who, for the first time in decades, utters his own name. For a split second his remaining eye reflects a strand of light from outside. He realizes then how tired, thirsty and hungry he is. It doesn't matter. After all, he cannot die. As a servant, his duty takes precedence. The Minotaur readjusts to a kneeling position. The cracking of his kneecaps bounces off the cold room's walls. He bows his head to you. The bond between jailer and prisoner is born from the deed, while that between master and servant is wilfully chosen. Will master hear my oath of servitude? You raise an eyebrow at the skeletal Minotaur's gesture. You cannot muster a response. In your silence, the Minotaur glances up to you. He starts shaking, barely able to hold his hands together. His lips tremble in anticipation. Master, the labyrinth was designed to torture me. The Minotaur's voice cracks, the first time he notes a tail thrashing behind him. The oath of servitude is what keeps it at bay. Please, master, allow me to recite it and take me into your service. You can only nod in response. With your authorization, he is able to proceed, after a minute to bring himself together again. By the provisions under the statute of Joseph the Merciful, the prisoner Asterion pledges loyalty and servitude to the labyrinth master. The prisoner is made keeper of the hotel above the valley and is bequeathed the power to realize the master's will. The master in turn binds the labyrinth, forbidding its malicious entities from leaving said valley. The realm was engineered to torture the prisoner, and indeed its mission shall be accomplished. The prisoner will carry the burden of servitude, but shall not suffer the labyrinth's wrath within the hotel's territory. The prisoner, shielded by his master's will, is made safe as long as his duty is fulfilled under the terms of the statute. Asterion dares not look up to you. Once he finishes his oath, his silence is broken only by the drops of sweat dripping from his trembling face. Will Master Leo take Asterion as his servant under the terms of the statute? What else can I say? Yes. Your words bounce off the walls and slither their way out of the cold room. The light dripping from the door behind you falters. Your shadow draped over the Minotaur flickers and shifts slightly. The world itself shudders under your words and responds by slithering into a new shape around you. Asterion still looks down, his frame now slouched further forward and no longer shaking. My gratefulness knows no bounds. I shall not disappoint. I may be in a sorry state now, or I'll be quick to recuperate. If Master so allows, I will take my leave. I need only to take a trip to the infirmary to patch myself up. He raises his head ever so slightly, glancing at the doorway. I am still unable to leave the room until you command me otherwise. I think he's going to want to leave by himself. We'll allow him. Very well, you have my permission to leave the room. Without uttering a word, the Minotaur bows to you, then puts his hand on the ground to try and rise up. He struggles, first in snapping his knee from this new position, and then in finding his balance. He succeeds after holding on to one of the shelves. One step at a time he ambles towards the door, taking breaks to rest against the wall and adjust his eyesight to the light. It takes a long time, but he leaves the cold room and makes his way to the infirmary. You follow him closely, making sure he doesn't trip and get hurt. His back is covered in bed sores. Against all odds, Asterion can indeed make it on his own. The infirmary is like looking into a period piece about the Second World War, with an added layer of dust and rust. Much like the kitchen, it was evacuated in a hurry. There are clipboards strewn about, medication vials left half opened, even a hypodermic needle still loaded with a sickly yellow liquid. Squinting his eye, Asterion walks up to the drawers, examines each one, silent till one of them reveals shards of green glass and a purple dried-out stain. The Minotaur slouches forward and sighs. He scrapes a finger on the drawer, trying to gather some of the purple dust it's no use. He continues looking around and you do the same. All you find are dusty bandages, long rotted medications, and deep in one of the drawers a nearly empty bottle of wine. You hold it up against the window. There's just an inch of wine left. The cork is dried out and crumbling into dust. In this heat it must have turned into vinegar already. You're about to put it back when you notice Asterion's gaze following the bottle. He looks up briefly to your eyes, his face contorted into a pleading frown. Is this what you're looking for? The Minotaur nods meekly.
Wine heals me.
He does not budge until you extend it to him, only then does he bow. The Minotaur sits on one of the infirmary's beds. The cork crumbles to dust when he pulls it out, leaving the bottle still clogged. You extend a hand to him. He switches from looking at his bottle, held close against his chest, to your hand. Begrudgingly he returns it to you. There's just enough cork left for you to pull it out. You return the bottle to the Minotaur. His hand shakes. He tries to pour a few drops of the wine into the palm of his hand. He places the bottle on the nightstand. The Minotaur dabs his finger into the wine, leaving a single drop nearly falling from it, and touches one of his wounds. He repeats the process again and again. A few drops fall on the bed. His face frowns bitterly. When his handful of wine is nearly gone, he rubs his still wet hand on his exposed skull. It has been a few minutes, but you can already notice some of his wounds healing. The Minotaur notices you watching. His lips, or what remains of them, curl into a proud half-smile. Yes, I can heal quite quickly, provided I have the wine for it. It is just a pity the full bottle I had stashed was broken. Asterion reaches a hand to his back. He flinches as he grazes one of the bed sores. Let me help you with that. You can't see it. He droops his ears in defeat, knowing full well you're right. However, he extends the bottle back to you with a speed betraying his eagerness. His tail flicks to and fro behind him. You dab a piece of old gauze with the wine and get to work. The Minotaur's wounds have a black tinge to them. A dark oil seems to have accumulated on them, oozing down his back in clearly defined rivers. He flinches when the fabric touches his damaged skin, but pushes back against you at the same time. 5 minutes later you run out of wine, but it's enough to rid Asterion of his most egregious bed sores. He lays a hand on his skull. I'll need a lot more wine for this. You ask if there's any other way you can help him. Asterion has a shy curve on his lips when he looks up to you from the bed. His tail flicks to the left, to the right. He swings his hooves over the floor. When he speaks, his voice is grave, however, and rumbles with sobriety. You've been too kind already, master. It would be terribly unfitting of a keeper to impose a task upon his master, let alone as many as you've aided me with so far. His one remaining eye is half closed. Please, do not worry about me. He speaks then with a twinge of relief. Unless master has a task for me, I shall take some rest here and then wash myself. I am most unfitting now for a keeper of the hotel. Master need not worry. Shouldn't you have some food first? What if you pass out in the bathroom? That shall not be an issue. I can obtain sustenance now that you've accepted me into your service. The master commands the labyrinth, and through the oath you have bequeathed me some of your power. I shall not go hungry again. There is much I can gladly teach you about the labyrinth, master. It shall tend to your needs if you know how to lead it. Observe. For a half second, as if the entire world blinks out around you, and your mind goes blank alongside it. Now Asterion has in his hands an overflowing bunch of grapes. Do you like grapes? I hope these are to your liking. You hesitate for accepting food from him. Shouldn't he be the one eating first? The master eats first, only then may the keeper feed. Regardless, master has been kind to me, and I would be happy to share with thee. The Minotaur seems eager to have you taste the grapes. They're impossibly sweet, but you only take a few so he may start eating. He flicks his ears and tail at your enjoyment, then starts wolfing down the grapes. He barely looks up to you now. As soon as he's run out of grapes, a new bunch appears on his hands, then a cup of water and more fruit still. When he does finally look up to you, he slows down and tries to clean his muzzle of all the juicy bits. His eye betrays a tinge of self-consciousness. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm more a beast than I am a man. Sometimes it gets the better of me. Well, I should not be so brutish around, Master. Perhaps this would be a good moment to let the Minotaur have some privacy. I'll let you have your rest. I'll come back to check up on you later. Asterion interrupts his fleeting frenzy to bow to you, dignified despite the juices running down his mouth and chest. I shall be presentable after my bath, Master. Worry not about me. Better just make sure he's okay. Are you sure you don't want help with the bath? I don't want you falling and getting hurt. The Minotaur shrinks down, his hunger giving way to a colder gaze. I speak the truth, Master. I may be frail now, but after this meal and the rest I'll be strong enough to do it. There's a bathroom right here in the infirmary. I understand your worry, but I can do it. The air grows tense for a moment. Asterion's voice rings with unexpected sharpness. He lays his hands over his crotch and closes his legs. Master need not fear. I shall look presentable next time we meet. He bows to you and remains like that until he leaves the infirmary. And with that, we're into chapter 3. And we're going to end this here. We'll pick it up next time. See how Asterion is doing. And I hope you're enjoying this. It's a lot of fun. I've played all the way through it so far. And I'm definitely intrigued to see where we are going. And yes, I do know some of my old Greek mythology, so it's nice to see that being involved here. And if you're wondering about the Master's name, it is very definitely a reference to a particular red wolf. But good going, guys, on this one. It's been a great fun playing this, and I'm enjoying reading it as well. I hope you all enjoyed the reading. So we'll see what happens next time, how Asterion is. We'll meet some more people. And I hope you will wait for that one and watch it when it comes out. And definitely download this game from itch. Play it yourself. There's lots of other choices you can take as you go through. You can be a good master, a bad master, whatever you want. And I'm just going to play through with one version as usual. I'm not going to do all sorts of options. So until then, bye for now.